It is officially the 2024 NHL All-Star break, and just as we all expected, at the break, the team that sits atop the NHL standings, the Vancouver Canucks. Now, we've talked about Vancouver on the channel a good bit throughout the course of the season, but I've yet to really make a dedicated video on the Vancouver Canucks and the season that they've had up until this point, so I thought with it now being the All-Star break, the Vancouver Canucks sitting at the top of the NHL standings, and after them making a massive trade to bring in Elias Lindholm last night, now would be the perfect time to do that. If you guys enjoy these kind of videos where we really zone in on one specific team, then be sure to leave the video a like. Let's see if we can hit 600 likes on this one. And of course, if this is your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start the video off by just looking at the Vancouver Canucks numbers through their first 49 games of the season. Their record currently sits at 33-11-5, good for 71 points, which puts them first place in the Pacific Division and also first place in the entire league. The Canucks rank second in both goals for per game and goals against per game. However, they rank just 27th in the NHL in shots on goal per game. Their team shooting percentage, which ranks first in the entire NHL, has been a huge talking point this season. Is the way they're winning, is the way they're scoring goals sustainable? I think that was a fair question to ask a month or so into the season, but now with this big of a sample size, through 49 games, the Canucks have shown zero signs of slowing down. And even if that sky-high team shooting percentage does come down during the second half of the season, they still have one of the league's absolute best goaltenders in Thatcher Demko, who's having a Vezina-caliber season, and a pretty solid backup in Casey DeSmith, who hasn't been relied upon a ton this season, but has given the Canucks quality starts when he's gotten the chance. This Vancouver Canucks team looks legit. When you have a superstar forward, a superstar defenseman, and a superstar goaltender, that can take you a long way. And it's not like they're only relying on guys like Pettersson, Quinn Hughes, and Thatcher Demko to carry them through the season. If you look at their leading scorers right now, JT Miller actually leads the team with 67 points. You then have Elias Pettersson with 64, who's also playing Selke level defense. Quinn Hughes, 62 points. In my opinion, the best defenseman in the NHL this season. Not only offensively is he producing at an unbelievable clip, but his defensive game has taken a massive step in the right direction as well. You have Brock Besser, 30 goals, a career high for him already, 52 points, and we're only at the All-Star break. And then rounding out the top five, you have Filip Hronek with 36 points, who has been a fantastic D partner for Quinn Hughes. Everything is clicking for the Vancouver Canucks right now. It seems like every player on the roster is just peaking at the same time. Aside from the 5 players that you see on the screen, they're also getting fantastic production from the depth as well. Guys like Teddy Bluger and Dakota Joshua have been huge difference makers in the bottom 6. Pius Suter's another guy. He's turned out to be a great signing for the Canucks so far, producing at over a half point per game clip. He's a versatile player that can play up and down the lineup. He's played a part in Vancouver's much improved penalty kill this season. So yes, while the top guys on the Canucks have been absolutely unbelievable this season, the depth and the bottom 6 have carried their weight as well. This is a team that's getting production from up and down the lineup, and after making a massive splash last night acquiring Elias Lindholm from the Calgary Flames, this is a team that in my opinion has only gotten deeper and more versatile. If you guys want to hear all my thoughts and a full breakdown of the Elias Lindholm trade, I uploaded that video last night, so if you haven't seen it yet, go ahead and check it out. But now I want to shift focus and look at the Vancouver Canucks projected lines. These are from dailyfaceoff.com, now with Elias Lindholm in the lineup. I said in my trade breakdown last night that I didn't think Elias Lindholm was quite good enough to be, a number 1 center on a Stanley Cup contending team, and this projected lineup from Daily Faceoff does have Lindholm listed as the number 1 center, but I more so meant that I didn't think Lindholm was good enough to be relied upon by a team to be the best center on a Stanley Cup contending team, and he's not going to have to be that guy in the Vancouver Canucks when you have somebody like JT Miller and also Elias Pettersson, who in this lineup, the projected lineup, is moved to the wing. But in my opinion, never a bad thing to have 2 centers on one line, especially 2 centers like Pettersson and Lindholm, who play such a strong 200-foot game. That top line of Pettersson, Lindholm, and Mikheyev, that projected top line, that is a line that the Canucks are going to be able to match up with any other line in the league. Like I mentioned before, Pettersson, in my opinion, a Selke Trophy candidate this season. Elias Lindholm is a guy throughout his career who's notoriously been known as a very strong 200-foot player, and Ilya Mikheyev has a very well-rounded game on the wing as well. The second line in this projected lineup is listed as JT Miller, centering Brock Besser and Pius Suter. Realistically, that really isn't a second line. This is a team with 2 first lines when you look at how everyone's performing right now. Third line, Teddy Blueger, Connor Garland, Dakota Joshua. Joshua and Blueger, like I mentioned, have been unbelievable in the Canucks bottom 6 this season. And then on the fourth line, you have Nils Höglander, who despite getting very limited minutes at 5-on-5, is producing. He's finishing. He's up to 14 goals on the season already. And then rounding out the forward group, as the fourth line center, you have Nils Amon and Sam Lafferty on the wing. Looking at this forward group, I think the Canucks could still be interested in a top 6 wing, somebody who can play next to Brock Besser and JT Miller, and then maybe slide Pius Suter down to that fourth line center spot that's currently occupied by Nils Amon. But we'll get into that more in a little bit, as I don't think the Canucks are done, and I think this is a team that's probably still going to be pretty active leading up to the deadline. First though, let's take a look at the projected lines in terms of the defense. Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, those guys are stapled together. That's the top pairing, and it's a defense that admittedly is a little bit top heavy, as after Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronek, you go to Ian Cole and Tyler Myers as your second pairing, and then Nikita Zadorov and Noah Juleson rounding out the top 6. I think it came as a surprise to some people that the Canucks went out and added a forward like Elias Lindholm before adding a defenseman, but if they were gonna add a forward, Lindholm fits the bill perfectly as a guy who plays a strong 200-foot game and can impact play at both ends of the ice. And then of course in net you have Thatcher Demko and Casey DeSmith, who have been one of the better tandems in the NHL this season. So that is the projected lineup after the Lindholm trade according to dailyfaceoff.com. Now I want to shift focus and look at some more potential trade deadline targets, as again, like I said, I don't think the Canucks are done, and I think they're still going to be pretty active looking to improve the roster leading up to the deadline. I think their top 2 needs, number 1, a top 4 right-handed defenseman for sure. Chris Tanev, Sean Walker, Alexander Carrier, Matthew Dumba are some names that came to mind. I think Chris Tanev should definitely be at the top of the Canucks list. It's a player that they are familiar with, and it was also heavily reported yesterday prior to the full details of the Lindholm trade coming out that there was talk of Chris Tanev originally being a part of the deal. So don't be surprised if we see Chris Tanev dealt to the Vancouver Canucks at some point between now and the deadline. It seems like Calgary and Vancouver have really liked doing business with each other this season. We had the Zadorov trade and then the Lindholm trade last night. Aside from a top 4 defenseman, the other need I have listed for the Canucks is a middle 6 wing, like I mentioned when talking about the projected forward lineup, somebody that could slot in next to JT Miller and Brock Besser, bump Pius Suter back down to that 4th line center spot, and ideally I think a cheaper middle 6 wing, someone who isn't going to cost a lot in terms of what the Vancouver Canucks would have to give up in a trade to bring them in after trading one of their top defensive prospects and a 1st round draft pick and Kuzmenko in the Lindholm trade. I can't see them wanting to part with too many other future assets unless they really want to swing for the fences and go all in. Imagine if they still found a way to get Jake Gensel or something. That'd be pretty crazy, but I don't have Gensel listed here just because I don't even think Pittsburgh ends up trading him. Some wingers that came to mind that I think could make some sense, I have Anthony Duclair, Max Pacioretty, and Jason Zucker listed. Max Pacioretty does have a no move clause, so would he want to pack everything up and move to a different team in a different conference in a season in which he's trying to, get back to form and rebound from all those injuries? It's hard to say, but he is getting up there in age. I think he's like 35 right now, so a chance to go and compete for a Stanley Cup may be enticing enough for him to waive that no move clause. Anthony Duclair is another player I have listed, which may be a head scratcher for some of you. Obviously, he hasn't really been the most productive player this season for the Sharks, but let's be real, there's not many players on the Sharks that have been all that productive this season, and Duclair is not all that far removed from scoring 30 plus, playing with some really talented guys on the Florida Panthers. Duclair is one of those guys that's not really someone you want to rely on to drive his own line, so setting him next to, JT Miller and Brock Besser in the lineup, he wouldn't have to be relied upon to do that. He can just go out there and do what he does, which is score goals. He kind of fits the Canucks run and gun style of play. Does he give up some on the defensive end? Sure, but after just adding somebody like Elias Lindholm and having such a great shutdown line with Lindholm, Pettersson, and Mikheyev, Duclair wouldn't really have to be relied upon to do much of anything defensively anyways, so that's like a really cheap option that came to mind that I think has some upside, and by cheap I mean they probably wouldn't have to give up much to get Duclair to San Jose at all. And then the last guy mentioned, Jason Zucker of the Arizona Coyotes. He's on a 1-year deal with the Yotes at a cap of 5.3 mil. Solid veteran, middle 6 winger, guy who's been a pretty consistent goal scorer throughout his career. He has 6 20-plus goal seasons under his belt. In my opinion, those are the Canucks' biggest needs leading up to the deadline after already acquiring Lindholm, a top 4 right shot defenseman, which should definitely be prioritized, and then maybe a winger that could slot in next to Brock Besser and JT Miller. So that is pretty much everything that I wanted to touch on in this video going over the Vancouver Canucks season. I think they're legit. I think they are serious Stanley Cup contenders in the Western Conference. I know there's a lot of people out there that have them labeled as pretenders and not contenders, but I'm not one of those people. I think they are a legit contender this season, and at the All-Star break, they're looking like Canada's best hope to end the Stanley Cup drought and bring the cup back to Canada. As always though, I want to know what you guys are thinking, especially if you're a fan of the Vancouver Canucks. Sound off down below in the comments. Like I mentioned at the start, if you guys want to see more videos like this where we really zero in on one team, then be sure to leave this video a like. That is the best way to show your support. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want NHL content just like this all year round, hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.